Hey, how's everyone feeling? Okay. Hi, my name is Jenelle Riley. I'm an editor at Variety. Thank you so much for joining me for this, well, not me, obviously, SAG-AFTRA Foundation has something to do with it, but for this very special screening of my favorite movie of the year, Room. At this time, please join me in welcoming the actress who stars in the film. She, of course, has appeared in everything from 21 Jump Street to Short Term 12 to this year's Trainwreck. For her work in Room, she was nominated just this week for a SAG Award, a Golden Globe Award, and was named Best Actress of the Year by the National Board of Review. Please welcome Brie Larson.
I'm so glad you're the first person to introduce me with my new fancy title.
Your lengthy. I was also, this will be my lame claim to fame for the rest of my life. You found out about your National Board of Review win
From you.
Twitter.
From you, actually.
Well, okay, but.
It was actually from you on Twitter saying, "Yay, congrats, you won." And I wrote back, "I won? What did I win? Yay!"
Yeah. But I like that you said yay before even knowing what
It's just always nice to win. It's, whatever it is, it's good. I get excited when I win like a free burger, so I'm fine.
I am curious because this is a SAG audience. Let's start with, how did you get the news about the SAG Award nomination?
I woke up early. I did the thing. And my parents were next to me holding my hand. I'm shooting in Hawaii right now, and so because of the time difference, you have to get up really early. So for SAG, it was 5 a.m., and for the Globes, it was 3 a.m., which is pretty brutal because I'm on night shoots right now, so we're shooting from 6 p.m. until the sun comes up. So I had too much fun with John C. Reilly. He hosted a dinner for me and my parents. He ordered in Thai food, and we killed a couple of bottles of rosé. And I only got about 2 hours of sleep before the nominations came out. And so I was kind of confused because I had one of those weird sort of half-drunk dreams where I ate a whole bag of chips, and it was so real that I woke up disappointed with myself. I was like, man, why'd you do that? Like, you ate Thai food. Why'd you eat a whole bag of chips after? And then and then when I got the news, I was super confused about the whole thing. So I was like, that felt so real. Is this real? Which one is real? It's more real that I ate a whole bag of chips than I was nominated. But it turns out I woke up the next day and I was still nominated.
Yes. They haven't rescinded it.
And I didn't eat the chips. So everything worked out.
And then you had to do it all again the next day for the Golden Globes.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't it tiring to just be nominated every morning at this
It's
point?
very hard. It's really stressful. I didn't go to college, and I didn't even graduate from, I was homeschooled, so I didn't have a big ceremony of any kind. So I'm not really big on the honorings. And so I've never really had that before. And so I got really weird and sort of internal, and went in my room for a while and just sort of read for a little bit because I was like, what does this mean? What is this? It's like finding out that you got into your college of your dreams, but on national television. It's a really odd thing because there's one part of it that's very private, that's very personal to me and means a lot to me. But there's also, I'd say 90% of it is not mine. 90% of it is just for public consumption. Mm-hmm. So it's a very odd thing to try and negotiate when your life becomes not completely yours.
Yeah.
And you're immediately asked, how do you feel? How do you feel? And you're like, good, I guess. I don't know.
Well, wisely, you've been working nonstop, it seems like, so that probably helps.
Yeah.
Being on an island somewhere.
Yeah, and I'm working in the mud, and I'm dirty. I'm doing an action movie, so I'm dirty with cuts and scrapes, and I'm running from CGI monsters all day, and so it's nice because all this stuff happens where you're like, I'm a princess, and then they're smearing dirt on you when you get to work, and you're like, oh, I'm just the same as everybody else.
Except John C. Reilly throws you parties.
Yeah. Thai parties.
So let's start with, I guess, the beginning of Room, which is based on Emma Donoghue's amazing 2010 bestseller. Were you familiar with the book? Did you read about it before you knew they were making a movie?
The book was given to me by my manager. We're both really big readers, and so she sent it to me. I think it was a year before I knew that it was being made into a movie. At that point, it had already been optioned. And so she gave it to me with a little Post-it note that was you're going to love this book. They're making it into a movie, but you'll never get it. And it's like, well, good to know. And it's nice. Just don't have crazy expectations for yourself. Just enjoy a book. And I just loved it. And I thought, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And so when it did come around, there's been a couple times in my life where you read something and you know that it's completely out of your reach, and every girl I knew, every famous person on the planet wanted to play this part. And so I knew that the only asset I had was going to be my intelligence and my passion for it. And so I asked to take a meeting with the director, and it was supposed to just be a short 30-minute meeting. I assumed because he was thinking like courtesy meeting, but it turned into this like 4-hour-long sort of epic conversation. And he had the same idea and vision as to where this book could go, what needed to be explored, and what the core of it really was, that this wasn't a crime tale, that this was a story of love and overcoming boundaries. Is that the tagline? It is.
It's love
They took that
knows
from
no
me.
boundaries.
That took that from me. I came up with love has no boundaries. For sure. So we both knew that way before there was a poster and a tag.
Yeah, you should get some marketing credit for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's so interesting to me because I was such a fan of the book, and there's so many ways this movie could have gone wrong, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And I know that Emma really held out for the right director and the right producing team, and going with Lenny Abrahamson, who made the movie Frank, which if you haven't seen, it's on Netflix and amazing.
It's really amazing.
And I think much like you, there were a lot of big name directors who wanted this material.
Oh yeah, totally.
And so for her to go with him, and then for him to, really choose the right actress, it's really a testament to how much everyone believed in this material and wanted to get it right.
Yeah, it's a lot of it is a very rare situation. Because with a novel that had such a huge following, you're right, it's usually ends up getting in the hands of someone who maybe doesn't fully understand the story or what it means, but has that resume that makes it seem really exciting. It's a hard thing about making movies is it's obviously incredibly powerful, and it's very creative, and it's very cerebral and internal, and I feel like it can be very spiritual, and at the same time, it is someone's millions of dollars that they are really hoping to double their return on. So it's like a weird combination of really trying to find meaning in something that is ultimately, it's a business. It's a business. And so we got really lucky with this movie that because of the following of the book, we actually were able to, sell it to foreign places, which then gave us the money to really have the control to do exactly what we needed to do, which meant I could be cast, we could hire Jacob instead of trying to find some twins that are not Jacob.
Right.
And we got to shoot for 49 days, and we got to shoot in order. So we got all of these great luxuries that I think are ultimately what made the movie what it is.
And let's talk about Jacob, who is also a SAG Award nominee.
Yay!
I believe the youngest man to ever be nominated for a SAG
My
Award.
mom was Googling it like crazy and couldn't find any proper info on it.
I believe Dakota Fanning was 6 when she was nominated for I Am Sam, but Jacob is the youngest man.
Oh.
Yes. And Emma said that they couldn't cast him too far out because children change so quickly. So how long was it before shooting that he was cast, that you two met?
It wasn't that long. I feel like maybe it was like a month or two, but I had no say in that process and didn't really even know what was going on with it. I just got sort of an email being like, here's your son. His name's Jacob Tremblay. And then they had like a picture of him with like a ferret. And I was like, this kid's amazing. He had his own like series of movies of him like being cute with a ferret, like a pet ferret that does tricks. I was like, this kid's way more talented than me. This is going to be great. And then I guess it was like a month after that we met and got pizza and played Legos and talked about Star Wars and realized that we were the same person, and the love affair commenced.
Yeah, I mean, he's really amazing. I think he was 8 when you shot the film,
He was 7. Wow. Well, he turned 8 while we were making
Okay.
it, but when we started, he was 7.
because he just turned 9. Don't you even have like birthdays within a week of each other or something?
Mine's the 1st and his is the 9th of October.
Obviously different years, but
I'm very, very young. I just clean up well.
but I mean, was it an instant connection? Because there is the old adage like never work with kids or animals, two things that I love. So
I know, I
don't
love
know.
working with them.
Yeah.
Actually. I prefer it in some ways. I mean, it was pretty. Kids are really shy. He was really shy, and I think it happens a lot. And there was some. I don't know how aware he was of the pressure, but I think it was. We're all really aware that it's kind of a confusing thing. Like, it's really confusing for a kid at that age to be like, and now go play with this person who like could kind of be your older sister, but is also sort of like your mom, and she's gonna take care of you in some ways. And so I think for the first hour he was like really shy and was sort of playing with his Lego people. And then I realized that when we were playing Lego, it became the easiest way to have a conversation with him because we didn't have to make eye contact right away. We could just build, and then he was in the power position because he thought I didn't know how to play Legos. I played dumb that I didn't know how to play Legos because obviously we know how to play Legos. But I wanted him to kind of explain to me his world, and so we got into this routine of coming over every night, and I would go to his apartment and we would bust out a new Lego set and build it. And so it became me coming into his world. Mm-hmm. And that was the most of our relationship was him slowly, as time went on, allowing me in more and more into his world.
And Lenny, the director, will be the first person to admit that you're more than just, a scene partner for Jacob. In many ways, you were kind of an acting coach or a co-director in getting him to do some of these more difficult scenes.
Yeah. I mean, I was the closest person to him. I was the one making eye contact with him, and I was the person that by the time we started shooting, I had spent so much time with him. I was his person. Like, I was a person that he trusted very much. We realized within like day one of shooting that the typical way that you would go about speaking with an adult actor is very different than how you can speak with a kid, because I'm used to finishing a take and camera says, you weren't in your light properly, make sure you don't let him block you, and a script supervisor will come over and say, you screwed up this line, you flipped this, and then the props person will say, remember, you got to pick up the cup on this word, you did it on a different one this time, and then Lenny comes up and says, I want you to try it like this, and then it's going to go like this, and it's going to go like this, and it can all go in my brain, and I can do it. A 7-year-old, that's like, no, that's just completely bananas. And so I watched day one this happen where everyone was talking to him like he was an adult, and it was overwhelming to get so much information from so many different people. And so Lenny and I talked and decided that how it would work is everyone from every department, if there was a note, technical or otherwise, that Jacob needed to hear, you'd go to Lenny. Lenny could then prioritize what was most important to him, because we knew we could maybe give him 1 or 2 notes between each take. Those would get filtered over to me, and then we would just roll, and I could be the one to sort of ask him to take it back again. Because if you've got Lenny who's behind him or something saying, Jacob, this keeps it in this same sort of zone, and also just allowed us to continue to build trust. And it was cool because I learned a lot about myself and my emotional capacity through doing that, because we'd do 2 shots where maybe it's an emotional scene and I'm starting to talk, or like the scene where I'm explaining to him what the world is, and I'm feeling this tension build in me, and I'm feeling tears come up, and I'm feeling them about to burst and come out, and then he would maybe say his line wrong, and I'd have to hold the tears and go like, okay, we're gonna take that again, and you're gonna try it. Remember what Lenny told you about this? And then he'd go, and then and then I'd release, and so it became this really interesting dance that I realized that I had more control over my emotions than I realized, and that I was very capable of making each moment and each day about him, because it had to be. It was always about getting his performance on camera first. So I was always going to be the last coverage of the day. Hopefully Jacob was there, but sometimes he can only work he can work much less hours than I can, so sometimes I'd have to imagine him being a tape mark, and he became such a strong presence, though, that It was very easy to keep him in your mind.
Well, and also at the same time, is it having something I always tell people when they're worried about being able to watch this movie is that it's about a happy child. It's about a kid who, doesn't know there's a world outside, and it would be hard to watch, I feel, if he were an unhappy child. And I feel like that must have helped on set, too, having someone who's, so young and grounded and reminding you that this is playtime.
Yeah, he doesn't care at all. He doesn't care about any of this. He's not, it was like, for me, it felt like I could be in the adult world. If I stood up, I could be in the adult world, and I could hear about the, we got to shovel all this snow and make it feel like it's spring, and we've got a problem with the card and the camera, and we're running out of time, and this isn't matching, and no one knows, blah, blah, blah. All of these things that just sort of happen where adults become very busy with their things that are happening in their life. But then I could just sort of duck down and be in Jacob's world, which was like underneath the smog. And he can't even hear it. And it means nothing to him. And there's something like very old about a child in the way that they don't dip into that craziness. Mm-hmm. They're so present, and they're so interested in playing all the time, and they don't want to, even if they get a sense that stress is happening, they immediately just want to get away from it. And so it became a great way for me to continue to stay sane through the making of this movie, and to remind myself constantly that what we were doing was really fun. Because when you're playing someone for 12 hours a day who's super depressed and scared of the world and coming to terms with a lot of abuse and mm-hmm. figuring out who she is, it's very easy for your brain to just continue to go to that place all the time. But when you have this kid that really doesn't have room for you to be depressed, he had no space for me to be in my zone. The second we yelled cut, I had to be done with it. The second, if I didn't, he'd be like, "What are you doing? Why? Why are you still crying? This is weird. Stop. Let's play." He couldn't understand that what was happening. So I had to learn once again really good at sort of keeping things to one side and keeping him to the other.
Didn't he ask you that? And you had this is a difficult movie, I'm sure, but the reunion scene in the cop car, he kind of didn't understand why you were so upset?
Yeah, well, he didn't understand because there's certain things about the movie we had to kind of speak to him in metaphor, so he doesn't understand everything that's happening, and we're shooting in order, so we could kind of keep him on a need-to-know basis. And so they put him in this cop car and said, one of the great things about a good director is they know they have omission. They know the key to omission, which is you only tell your actors and certain players what they need to know. You don't boggle them down with information of everything. So Lenny went and told Jacob, Brie's going to come running out of here. I need you to, she's not going to know where you are, so you're going to need to scream so that she knows where you are. I went into the back, into room, and he told me, you need to burst out of here as quickly as you can and try and find Jacob, because you don't know where he is. I had no idea that there were cop cars. I didn't know that he was going to be in one of them. I also had no idea that there was going to be police officers. He then separately told all this group of police officers there's going to be a woman running in just a tank top and socks. And it's snowing and icy. It was the dead of winter in Toronto. I was like, you need to try and restrain her, calm her down, put a jacket on her, and lead her to her child. So all these things are happening simultaneously. So I take off running. And what I found out later, and it made sense because I had bruises the next morning, and I could not understand why, but it wasn't until a couple days later that the police officers were like, "Are you okay?" And they told me that I ran out, and I ran out so fast, they were trying to restrain me, and I was like, "Fuck off," and was hitting them and hurting them. They were trying to put a coat on me, and I was hitting them, trying to get them to get off of me, and then I slipped and fell on the ice. I wouldn't let them help me up. And then I just kept, it was at least let them do that. I don't know what was wrong with me. So I then just took off running. He also didn't tell me that, that the car door was going to be locked. And that was the most upsetting and frustrating thing in the world was that moment of I was so mad at Lenny for not telling me that because it was just and so I opened the door, and I didn't realize that I hit my head on the car door as I dove in to grab him because I was so just trying to get him. And then I'm on the ground and I'm holding him, and it was just this outpour of, I had never felt anything like that in my life before. I I'm not a parent myself, and it shocked me to see what was inside of me and how much love I had for this child and how much I needed him and how I worried I was about him and how much I cared about him and how complete I felt when I was holding him. And then we got into the cop car, and he says his line, "Can we go back in the room?" And I'm thinking, oh God, this is bad. And then they all cut, and he immediately pushes me off, and he's like, "I just don't get it." I just saw you 5 minutes ago. I'm not sure why you're so upset and surprised to see me right now. It's like, oh my God. I mean, that's what I was dealing with, which is like so brilliant and so confusing at the same time.
I'm curious about even just the preparation going into the movie, because I know there was physical preparation. You stayed out of the sun, but also the mental preparation. I mean, is there any way you could have prepared yourself for this shoot?
I mean, I tried the best I could. I took like 8 months to really build her, and that was the only thing I did was try and my best to get to know her more and more every day. It felt like so much and such a responsibility, because the more that I was researching the real stories, the more I felt this burning inside of me that I couldn't take any, I couldn't cut any corners with this, that these women had suffered through so much that I really wanted to get as close to that sense of devotion, like devoting myself to letting go of some of the trappings of my life. So yeah, staying out of the sun, being on this very sparse, rigid diet, working out really hard to the point of just exhausting my body. I basically eliminated anything that was pleasurable from my life. I also then tried to, I stayed at home. I was staying at home pretty much all the time except for going to the gym. But I was still kind of talking with friends and stuff as best I could. And then I decided to do a month of almost just like a fast from everything, from everybody, from everything. No internet, no nothing. And that was really, really hard and was really informative and very helpful. But it's interesting now because when you're making a movie, this was not a movie that was fun to explain to people when they're like, "So what you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm doing a movie. I'm trapped in a room and get raped every week and got a kid, but it's going to be uplifting." And they're like, "Ooh, well, Merry Christmas." And they're like, "Don't need to hear about this on my birthday dinner, but thank you." So I don't generally talk about the stuff I'm doing anyway, but this movie in particular, I just was like, it was so awkward. Like, I would always be like, "Oh, I'm learning calligraphy," like just do anything that was as far away from talking about this movie as possible. And I thought I was doing this fantastic job of being myself. Mm-hmm. It's not until now that the movie's come out that my friends are like, "Jesus, Brie, now this all makes so much sense." Like, really? Now I'm seeing why there was this like 1,000-yard stare that you had sometimes. And it was because I was like really diving into the darkness of this planet in a way that we don't usually choose to do. Like, I had to spend so much time learning about trauma, learning about how the brain organizes trauma, speaking with a trauma specialist about this at length as to how the brain wires and organizes it, how it feels, how it allows itself to, what it will allow itself to take in, and how it deals with it, and the PTSD of it. And it shows you something, and I think that's one of the things that's the best part of our job, is that it really shows you these other sides of the world that you wouldn't get to see otherwise. The hard part is then coming back. Mm-hmm. And it was actually, I felt a lot easier for me to get close to Ma. It was harder to let go. It was much harder when the movie was done to put that to rest, because I just felt so angry. I felt so angry about everything that had ever happened to someone who was abused. It just hurt me so much that it was hard to accept any goodness in my life. It was really hard for me to have a good meal. I remember once, since we were shooting in order, once I'm out of room, I didn't have to be on the rigid diet anymore. And we'd have these catered lunches, and it's like every possible thing you could ever imagine, and 14 cakes. And I would just like stare at it all, like so overwhelmed, because I didn't know what I wanted anymore. And I had to go to this weird place of like getting a bit of everything. And I'd go get coffee with a friend, and I'd have like an iced tea and a cappuccino and a scone and a cinnamon roll and a bagel with cream cheese. And they'd be like, "What's going on?" Like, why? I was like, "I don't know who I am.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened." But I'm trying to get back into participating in life again, because I was playing someone who was so fearful of participating again. And that's we as humans, it's so important that we participate. So now I'm participating.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
I mean, I can't even imagine. I went to Room. You know, they have reassembled the sets over at the Landmark Pavilion, and I was really excited to see it. But I also was going, it wasn't until I started to walk in, I was like, wait a second, no. You know, I kind of had this reaction, and just being in there, I didn't think I could have more respect for the artists who put this all together.
Yeah.
Until I was in there, and I saw how they had these panels and how so specific everything was, but it was hard for me to be in there for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine spending hours on end in there.
Well, it's weird, though, because we shot in order, it wasn't a place of torture.
Mm-hmm.
It was a place of, like, it was our safe place. It was the place where we went in there and magical things happen. I don't know how I would feel now. Like, I'm definitely not going to be going to the Landmark and walking in there. I can tell you that. You guys enjoy that for you, but I don't think we need to see the end of the movie again in real life. Even my mom sent me a photo. She went in, and it freaked me out. It really, and on Twitter, people have been sending me photos of them inside and taking video of it and sitting in the chair and being like, "I'm in Room." And my reaction was so unlike anything I could have ever imagined, where it felt like someone like opened up my childhood bedroom and was like, "Come on in." And I had this territorial feeling of like, but that's my place. Like, well, you can't, don't touch anything. Like, I felt weird about it. Like, it was such a, you know, Jacob and I did those drawings and made those toys, and it was so our space that we spent time creating with our amazing production designer, that it's a weird thing. It's weird that it still like exists too.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I didn't post that picture of me on your bed. I didn't know what, I just sat there and I was like, this is really cool, and I want to mark this moment, but I feel weird.
Yeah, it's super weird.
And even though I mentally know what 10 by 10 is, I could not get over how small it was.
It's really small.
And they did amazing things, like they had the skylight. I don't need to tell you, but
tell me.
Something I didn't realize, like the attention to detail. They figured out where the sun would hit the wall from the skylight, and so that part of the set was more faded.
Yeah.
I mean, it was brilliant.
I know, isn't that crazy?
The attention to detail was amazing.
And they'd have us in that room. They put Jacob and I in room and just let us play and see where we would naturally sort of hang. And they'd notice, like, when we would do track, we did track every day for like a month, no cameras, just to get into that. So they'd notice where we would naturally go, and so they wore those places down. Or they noticed if Jacob would naturally kind of skim a wall, they would rub that part down, because they'd be like, oh, he would do that every day, so that part needs to be worn in. And it's all of these small things that you don't necessarily get when you first view the movie. I think you feel it innately, but there's so much more to the movie. Like, there's so many hidden things in it that I think I've watched it like 5 times now, and it just keeps opening up to me.
What is it like for you to watch it? Because I remember asking Jacob if he watched it, and he said, well, I've seen it 4 times, but my mom always cries. And then he's like, so I don't know why she wants to keep watching it. And I was like, well, I cry too, but I also cry when I'm happy. You know, I'm happy for you guys at the end. And he goes, you cry when you're happy? That's weird.
That's him.
Yeah. So, I mean, it must be doubly strange for you.
It's a very confusing thing. I mean, the first time I watched it, I was just like, I was just like, well, that's what the back of my head looks like. That's crazy. Or like, that's what it looks like. That's the bottom of my chin looks like. Like, you get to see all these angles that you don't normally get to see of yourself. And I didn't really understand if the movie was good or not at all. Like, I couldn't step away from it. I still just felt like it was just a series of images that were compiled together, like watching a home movie. But the movie is much more than my little brain could have comprehended while we were making it. I knew some of the vastness of it. I knew some of the mythology that was in it, and I knew I knew certain things, but I couldn't understand the amount of just like the love that is in this movie and the way that it opens up. And I mean, I think what it makes me feel, because every time I've watched it, I've been in a theater with a room full of people, is it makes me feel really connected to people.
Yeah.
It makes me really love people. And it makes me feel completely in awe every time that we try. That life is not just easy and exciting. It's also super, super hard and really complicated. And we're all trying our best and we make tons of mistakes. But we choose to keep trying. And I felt immediately grateful to my family. I felt grateful to my friends. I feel grateful to all of us as human beings for trying. It immediately made me think about my friendships that I have and how I had friends in my past that maybe did something shitty and now they're not my friend anymore. But I didn't just go, well, guess I'll never have friends now. Tried that out and it doesn't work. You keep going. Mm-hmm. And I'm still a fairly new person to this planet, and I have a very hard time comprehending that life goes on. I still have a bit of teenager in me that's like, well, this is the end. And to have a movie like this that I feel like is this constant reminder that we can continue to move on. That might take a while. It might take a lot of help from a lot of different people. It might take a lot of soul searching, but we can go on.
And by the way, talk about range. You were in two of the best movies of this year, because you also did Trainwreck, which is pretty much the polar opposite of this movie.
Yeah.
How far apart were they? I mean, were you a funner person to be around during the making of that movie?
Yes, most definitely. I was shot Trainwreck before Room. Trainwreck was like my final goodbye to everything that was fun to eat. And everybody made a real point about that. I mean, every day when I'd be like doubling over, like laughing so hard, Joe would come over and be like, better enjoy it before you go in Room. He's like, thanks. I didn't understand what he meant. Like, I was always like, it's going to be fine. Like, it's not going to be so bad. And it wasn't until I was in the thick of it, I was like, you're right. I was like having all these epiphanies of like, why didn't I do a career of comedy? Like, what am I doing to myself? Like, why did I do this? Amy's smarter than me. God damn it. Like, Trainwreck is a lot of fun. Yeah. A lot of fun. And even doing an action movie now, it's so cool to do something that is utilizing my physicality. It's so much more in my body. It's not so heady. It does take problem solving. It does take suspending disbelief. It takes all of those things that is the same for Room. But it's more playful. Yeah. Like, we're just a bunch of kids. We just keep laughing every day about it. We're just a bunch of kids, like, playing in the forest all day. And it's very simple in that way.
I do want to take some questions from the audience, if I have time. I think I have time for a couple. Keely Field, maybe dropped off the question and ran. Oh, she's way in the back. Okay. Wants to know, what's the best advice you've ever received as an actor?
I did a film with the DP Michael Chapman, who's a legend. He was the camera operator for Jaws and Raging Bull, and he was very intense. I was doing like a kid's movie about saving baby owls, but for some reason he was the DP. And
was this Hoot?
It was Hoot.
I love Hoot.
Yeah, fantastic movie. And he was always like whittling a staff. He was like always carving into something and was always kind of cranky and was like, he's scared. And I was just fascinated by him because I was like, wow, he's just an absolute legend. And at the end of the shoot, I said, I was like 14 or 15. I was 15. I'm like, do you have any advice? Anything that I should know? It's the only time in my career that I've asked for advice. You just don't do that really, I guess. But I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But I was like, do you have any advice? And he was like, always take a nap at lunch. And I do think that it's kind of the best advice I've gotten. Yeah. I know it might seem like odd, and he said that to me too. He was like, I know you're going to think this is weird, but trust me. And it's so true, because being an actor is all output. It's just giving. And then on top of it, you're dealing with a set dynamic, which is just all these different people's emotions and trying to keep morale up while also trying to do your own thing. And it's exhausting. And so making sure, at least for me, because I think I can get quite sensitive to things like that, taking that 30 minutes of, that could be a meditation or just closing my eyes, just resting and breathing, it just completely recharges me and gets me through the second half of the day. Mm-hmm. So Although I was just devastated at 15 years old. I thought I was going to get the key to the world.
Maybe you did.
But I think I did.
Oh, we have a question from Zach Goodspeed. First of all, his little brother Jake loves you. And what's been the hardest obstacle you've had to conquer? Oh, sorry, the hardest obstacle in your career to conquer, and what did you glean from that? P.S. You rock.
P.S. Thanks. I mean, really, it's a bigger thing, but really the biggest obstacle I ever had to overcome was the jean miniskirt, which sounds, it's very specific, but it is. For so much of my career, once I basically got boobs, from the time I was boobs until this moment, I can't tell you how many times I would go in and audition and they'd be like, "Can you come back sexier?" And you can't believe that that's a real thing that someone's saying to you. Like, love what you're doing, could totally play Adam Sandler's girlfriend at 18 years old. Perfect, age is not a problem, but you need to come back and sex it up. And I felt like every time that thing for me in particular, there was all the other ones that was like, you're too tall, you're not funny enough, you're not pretty enough, you're too pretty, you're not this, you're too much of that. All of those things like were sort of, they did bother me, but the thing that bothered me the most was being reduced to being a sexual being, and to be, and I tried it like one or two times, and you just feel cheap. You just feel weird, and you're sitting in a waiting room with 20 other girls that are also wearing the jean mini. Like I laughed about it with a bunch of other actresses. Because I was like, when did you burn your jean mini skirt? It's like a real thing of us all knowing that we had the pumps, we had the tank top, we had the push-up bra, and we had the jean mini skirt for those particular auditions. And as much as it was just the most irritating thing to me, I realized that it was a huge turning point, because I realized that it never sat well with me. I never felt sexy like that, and so I never would book roles like that because that wasn't what I thought was sexy. So I started just detouring completely from it, and I think that that's where like my performance in like Rampart or even United States of Terror were all in reaction to that, whether I'd like to admit it or not. It was all this like, in Short Term 12 becoming the pinnacle of that, of my complete determination to never be the lead of any movie, because I thought that if I exposed myself too much, that then I was going to become this like this commodity of a person, and I just didn't want to be that. And it wasn't until like Short Term 12 in particular, where it was where I felt like I really got to like paint with all the colors, that I realized that we need more space for women to be beautiful in other ways. And I think Room becomes a great representation of that as well. Like, it's very weird but true that I at least get on once a day on Twitter someone saying, "Just saw Room, will you marry me?" And I'm like, that's kind of weird from this movie. Like, I get it a little bit, but it's kind of an odd thing. But it's finding a way for us to really share what it means to be a beautiful, strong, sexy, commanding woman that doesn't just look like one thing, and it's not your weird 14-year-old fantasy. I hated every time I could feel a director eyeing me and trying to put me in wardrobe that was like what he used to visualize when he was a teenager. We need to like break free of all of that. And, oh, thanks. But that takes it coming from both sides. It takes it from women deciding what makes them feel good and feel sexy and feel confident, because then that transfers on screen. And it takes men being aware of their issues when it comes to female sexuality. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
And obviously, I mean, a director like Lenny Abrahamson, has an imagination. But, I mean, did you ever worry that you weren't going to find those collaborators who could see you?
Oh, yeah. Totally. It was really painful for a very long time because I never felt like I fit in at all. I think that's why the SAG nomination in particular was very moving to me, because I realized like I'd never been part of any club in my life. Like, I'm a member of the Los Angeles Mushroom Society. It's not psychedelics, it's just mushrooms. And SAG, I mean, and I'm scuba certified. Those are like my things. And so to be taken in that way was so cool. Like, I got bullied in school. I was always like the weird one. And so to find a place, because I've always felt like I saw things differently, And for a while, I felt shamed for that. I felt like it was wrong that I didn't want to go in and just go in the jean miniskirt. Who cares? Like, what is it hurting you? But there was always something to me that felt like, when does this stuff stop? If it doesn't stop with me, and I just kept putting it out on the line of like, I realized that I would rather go flip pancakes at Dupar's than be somebody that I'm not. Than be in a movie where I have to play something that I think is a poor representation of what it is to be a human being. And I do think that movies become this incredible reflection of who we are. Like, it's a very symbiotic relationship. The movies are where we're at, we become what the movies are, and it just carries on. And so having that sense of care and awareness is incredibly important. And I think once I took that turn for myself, and once I really clearly knew, not so clearly what I was, but what I was not, then I started finding the directors. Because you do end up, the like-minded people end up finding each other. And I realize now, in this very bizarre, I had just such a weird week with these nominations of like, suddenly you feel like you like see all these flashes of your life and all of the hard moments and all of the no's. And I'm so much more grateful for the no's than the yeses at this point in my life. I so love it. And I know it's like, it was so painful at the time to have like, I think it was like 20 years of auditioning. I auditioned for 20 years of my life, and I don't even want to think about how many times I was told no and told what I was not. But now I feel like it's the greatest gift ever, because I have such thicker skin because of it, such a stronger sense of self, and I know that I wasn't going to work with the right people. We're all just, it's like OkCupid. Like, we're just finding each other. And so if you understand where you're coming from, what your intention is, then you'll find the people. Mm-hmm. The people will find you. You'll find each other, however it works.
And I'm so glad you guys found each other. I know that you have had a crazy week and you just got off a plane, and we so appreciate you being here today. Thank you guys for being a great audience.
I hope that made sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.